Welcome to my channel Bookish English 2, my friends. Today, I'm going to take you through 5 stories that will change the way you see life forever. These are not fantasy tales. These are real human stories. Simple, powerful, unforgettable. Stories that teach us about love, sacrifice, greed, kindness, money, and the strange way fate plays with us. Each story hides a mirror. One will make you cry, one will make you laugh, one will make you think about your own choices. You'll see poor people who are richer than millionaires, clever men who lose to their own lies, and hearts that break just before they wake. Stay with me till the end, because every story is a lesson, and the last one will leave you silent, staring at your own heart. Tell me in the comments right now, do you believe life rewards goodness or cleverness? My friend Adam will read the stories for you.
Chapter 1 The Gift of the Magi. It was winter in New York City. The year was 1905. The streets were full of lights, carriages, and people moving fast through the cold air. Expensive stores showed beautiful gifts behind glass windows. Shiny watches, long gold chains, dresses, and hats waited for rich people to buy them. But in a small street, behind an old wooden door, lived a young couple who didn't have much money but had something more precious than all those golden things. They had love. Her name was Della, and his name was Jim. They lived in a tiny apartment that cost only $8 a week. It had 2 small rooms, 1 table, 2 chairs, and no special decorations. There were no pictures on the wall, no flowers on the table, only the feeling of love that made the home warm even in the coldest days. Jim worked long hours in an office for $20 a week. Every evening he came home tired, but the moment he opened the door and saw Della's smile, his tiredness disappeared. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and that was enough. Now it was the day before Christmas. Della sat near the window counting her money. $1, $2, then some coins. Altogether she had $1.87. She counted it again and again. She wanted to buy a Christmas gift for Jim, something special that could show her love, something that could tell him, "You are everything to me." But how could she buy a good gift with so little money? Her eyes filled with tears as she looked at the few coins in her hand. She walked across the small room and looked into the mirror. Her reflection looked sad. Her long brown hair fell over her shoulders like a river of gold. It was her pride, her beauty, the one thing she loved about herself. Jim always said, "I love to see your hair in the morning sunlight. When I am tired at work, I think of your hair and I feel alive again." Della smiled sadly. Then she looked at the small table where Jim's old watch usually lay. That gold watch was his treasure. It had belonged to his father and before that to his grandfather. It was not a new watch, but it was full of memories. Della suddenly stood up. Her eyes were full of a new idea. She put on her thin old coat and her small hat. She took her purse and ran out into the street. The wind was cold and the snow touched her face, but she didn't stop. She walked quickly to Mrs. Sofronie's hair store. Mrs. Sofronie was an old woman who bought women's hair and made wigs from it. When Della entered, Mrs. Sofronie looked at her. "Will you buy my hair?" Della asked softly. "I can give you $20, Mrs. Sofronie said, touching Della's long hair. "Please take it quickly," Della replied. She tried to be brave. In a few minutes, Della's beautiful hair was gone. She looked strange, almost like a little girl. She didn't want to see her reflection, but in her hand was $20, and her heart was beating fast. She ran through the streets again, looking in every store window. She wanted the perfect gift for Jim. She looked at scarves, gloves, and books, but nothing felt right. Then she saw it in one small shop window, a simple but beautiful gold chain for a pocket watch. It was strong and elegant, just like Jim. "How much?" she asked the shopkeeper. $21, he said. Della smiled. "It's perfect." She paid all her money, $21, and left with $1 in change. Her hair was gone, but her heart felt light. She imagined Jim's smile when he saw the chain. She could almost hear him saying, "Della, this is exactly what I wanted." When she returned home, she looked at herself in the mirror again. Her short hair made her look funny. "Will Jim still think I'm beautiful?" she whispered. Then she smiled to herself. "I did it for love. That's all that matters." She prepared dinner, cleaned the small table, and waited for Jim to come home. Her heart was beating faster with every sound in the hallway. At 7 o'clock, Jim opened the door. He looked tired as usual, wearing his old coat and shoes, but when his eyes saw Della, he stopped. He didn't say a word. He just looked at her short hair, her changed face, her nervous smile. Della ran to him and said, "Jim, please don't look at me like that. My hair will grow again. I cut it because I wanted to buy you a Christmas gift. Let's forget about my hair. Let's be happy. It's Christmas tomorrow." Jim didn't speak. Slowly he put something from his pocket onto the table. It was a small box. He smiled quietly and said, "Della, before you open this, I want to say that no haircut could ever make me love you less. You are still the most beautiful woman in the world to me." Della opened the box, and for a moment she couldn't breathe. Inside were two beautiful, expensive combs, the same combs she had looked at many times through a shop window on 5th Street, combs with shining jewels that she had always dreamed of wearing in her long hair. Tears came into her eyes. She touched the combs and laughed softly. "Oh, Jim, they are so beautiful, but my hair is gone." Then she smiled bravely. "Wait, I have something for you too." She gave him the small box with the golden chain inside. "Now your watch will have a home, Jim," she said happily. But Jim didn't open his watch. He smiled and sat down quietly. "Della," he said, "let's put our gifts away for a while. I sold my watch today to buy you these combs." For a moment there was silence. The little room was full of love and sadness together. They looked at each other and then both started laughing. They had given away their most precious things, and yet they felt richer than ever before. Della's eyes were full of tears, but her heart was full of light. Jim took her hand and said softly, "We are the luckiest people in the world, Della, because we gave out of love." That night they sat together eating simple food, but their hearts were warm. Outside the city was cold and busy. People were buying gifts, spending money, showing off their clothes, but in that small apartment, two people who had almost nothing had discovered something greater, the real meaning of giving. Love is not measured by price. It is measured by how much you are willing to sacrifice for someone else. Della lost her hair. Jim lost his watch, but both gained something that never fades, the joy of true love. If you think deeply, this story teaches us a beautiful truth. Many people want to give big gifts, expensive gifts, gifts that look shiny, but the greatest gifts come from the heart. Della didn't buy something to impress Jim. She wanted to make him happy. And Jim didn't buy something to show wealth. He wanted to make her smile. That is real love, love that gives without asking anything in return. Imagine for a moment if everyone in the world gave like Della and Jim. Imagine friends, families, lovers, even strangers giving with kindness, not for reward but from love. The world would be brighter. Every street would feel like Christmas. When you learn English through stories like this, you also learn about life. You see emotions, choices, and values. You understand how words like love, gift, sacrifice, care, and smile are not just vocabulary, they are pieces of human experience. Della and Jim are not heroes from a fantasy. They are ordinary people, just like us. They struggle, they work hard, they worry about money, but they show that even the poorest people can be rich in heart. Sometimes we think happiness comes from success, big houses, or fame. But happiness often lives quietly in small rooms between two people who love each other sincerely. The next morning, when Christmas arrived, the sun entered through the small window of their apartment. Della looked at her short hair in the mirror and smiled. Jim looked at his watch chain on the table and laughed softly. Both knew they didn't lose anything. They had given and received love. That was their real Christmas gift. Every time you think about giving, remember Della and Jim. Sometimes we give money, sometimes we give time, sometimes we give words of comfort. All gifts are beautiful when they come from the heart. Life often tests us. It takes something away to give something better. Della lost her hair, but she gained deeper love. Jim lost his watch, but he gained a greater understanding of what it means to care. That is why this story, written more than 100 years ago, still touches hearts today, because it speaks a language everyone understands, the language of love. Maybe you too have someone you love deeply. Maybe you want to show your care but feel you don't have enough money or things to give. Remember, your love, your time, your kindness are the most valuable gifts. Even a smile or a word of encouragement can be magic. And just like Della and Jim, when you give with love, you always receive something back, even if it's not in money. You receive peace, connection, and happiness. So when you finish this story, think about your own life. Think about the people who love you and the ones you love. What can you give them today, not from your pocket but from your heart? Maybe it's saying thank you. Maybe it's helping them. Maybe it's listening. The story of the gift of the Magi is not just about a couple in 1905. It's about you, me, and everyone who has ever loved someone truly. They were called the Magi because in the Bible, the Magi were wise men who brought gifts to baby Jesus. But O. Henry, the writer, wanted us to see that wisdom is not in gold or silver, it's in understanding love. Della and Jim were poor, but they were the wisest givers. And maybe, when you finish watching this video, you'll remember this story when you buy a gift, when you help someone, or when you love, because true gifts are not bought, they are felt. Chapter 2. The Art Game. The story begins one quiet morning in Pittsburgh, a big city full of new money, tall chimneys, and people dreaming of success. The year is early in the 20th century when steel and business made many people rich overnight. The streets were noisy with the sound of wagons, horses, and men talking about money. Some people worked hard to earn it. Others looked for clever ways to get it. In one small hotel room, two friends sat near a window, thinking about the same thing: how to make money. Their names were Andy Tucker and Jeff Peters. Both were not bad men. They were not thieves with guns or dangerous hearts. They were clever talkers, always thinking, always planning. They liked to play tricks, but they also liked to believe that their tricks were fair. To them, life was a game, and in this game, brains were more important than luck. On that morning, Jeff was reading a newspaper while Andy walked up and down the room, full of energy. Andy stopped suddenly and said, "Jeff, my friend, we aren't making any money these days. Let's try a new game." Jeff looked up and said slowly, "Well, Andy, tell me your plan. But remember one thing. I don't want to take money from good people. I don't want to hurt anyone." Andy smiled and said, "We aren't going to take money from anyone. They will buy things from us. Fair and square." Jeff put the newspaper down and said, "That sounds like our old game. What's new this time?" Andy sat on the bed, eyes shining. "This time we are going to play a child's game, but with rich people. We will move to Pittsburgh. There are new millionaires there, men with shiny shoes and no sense of art. They have money, but not wisdom. They worked for years in factories, and now they want to buy beautiful things to look like gentlemen. We can help them." Jeff looked at Andy with surprise. "Why Pittsburgh?" Andy answered, "Because those millionaires have new money. Old money knows too much. New money wants to show off. We can find a man who wants to look like a cultured gentleman. He will pay anything to own something rare and beautiful." Jeff shook his head slowly but smiled. "You always have ideas, Andy. What will we sell him?" Andy stood up proudly. "You'll see. Let's get to work." 3 days later, the two men were sitting again in the same hotel room. Andy had been busy walking around the city, visiting cafes, talking to people. He came in that evening looking excited. "Jeff, I found him," he said. "I met a millionaire." Jeff laughed. "Where did you meet a millionaire? At the bank?" Andy shook his head. "No, at a small coffee shop on 12th Street. These new rich people don't like fancy places. They go where they feel simple and free. His name is Mr. Scudder. He has $12 million in the bank. But he is still new to the world of gentlemen. He wants to learn about books, music, and art. He told me he wants to become a man of culture." Jeff smiled kindly. "And how do you plan to help him?" Andy looked clever. By selling him something beautiful, something he thinks is rare, something with a story. He has many expensive paintings in his house, but there's one thing he loves most: a small gold horse from Egypt. He says it's more than 2,000 years old. It's his treasure. And here's the key. He believes there's another one like it somewhere in the world, the twin of his horse. He has been searching for it for years but can't find it." Jeff frowned. "But Andy, how will we find another gold horse from Egypt? We are not art experts." Andy laughed softly. "My friend, don't worry about that. Wait and see." The next afternoon, Andy came back to the hotel carrying a brown paper bag. He closed the door and looked around to make sure no one was watching. "Jeff, look at this," he whispered. Jeff opened the bag and gasped. Inside was a small shining gold horse. It looked old, with tiny carvings and strange letters on its body. "Andy," Jeff said in shock, "is this real? Where did you get it?" Andy said calmly, "I found it in a small antique store near here. It was lying under some dusty old boxes. The old man who owned the shop didn't know its value. He wanted $35. I gave him $25 and brought it here." Jeff looked again at the golden horse. "It looks exactly like the one Mr. Scudder has." Andy smiled slowly. "Exactly, my friend. And that's the magic. Mr. Scudder believes there are two horses. He already has one. He'll think this is the missing twin, and you, my dear Jeff, will sell it to him." "Me?" Jeff asked. "Why me?" "Because you have a kind face and a soft voice. You look like a teacher, not a trickster. You will tell him that you are an art expert from New York, and you just found this piece. You want to sell it to a collector. He will come running." Jeff didn't like the idea. "Andy, I told you, I don't want to cheat anyone." Andy patted his shoulder. "We're not cheating him. He's buying what he already loves. He'll be happy. You'll see." That evening, Jeff called Mr. Scudder. "Good evening, sir. My name is Peters. I'm an art teacher and collector. I have a small Egyptian statue that looks exactly like the one in your collection. Perhaps we should meet." Scudder's voice on the other end was full of excitement. "Really? You have it? The other golden horse? I must see it. I'll come at once." Within an hour, Mr. Scudder arrived at their hotel. He was tall, proud, and looked nervous, like a child meeting his dream. When Jeff showed him the golden horse, Scudder's face lit up. "It's beautiful," he whispered. "It's the twin of my horse. Look, even the tiny marks are the same. I can't believe this." Jeff smiled politely. "Yes, sir. I knew you had the other one. I thought you might like to have both. I was thinking of selling it to my art school, but maybe it belongs with you." Scudder looked at him quickly. "No, no. I must have it. I'll pay you $2,500. Jeff pretended to hesitate. "It's worth much more, sir, but if it makes you happy, I'll accept." Mr. Scudder took out his checkbook with shaking hands and wrote the amount. He thanked Jeff again and again. "Now I'll have both horses in my house, together at last." After he left, Jeff ran to Andy's room. "He bought it, Andy. He was so happy he almost cried. Here's the money." Andy checked his watch and said calmly, "Good. Let's catch the 10:45 train to Cincinnati." Jeff looked confused. Why leave now? Everything went perfectly. He has his two horses, and we have the money. Andy smiled a strange smile. "He doesn't have two horses, Jeff. He still has one." Jeff froze. "What do you mean?" Andy sat back and laughed quietly. "When I went to his house yesterday, he showed me his golden horse. While he was talking, I slipped it into my pocket. The one we sold him was his own horse." Jeff stared at him in shock. "Andy, you stole from him?" Andy said calmly, "Yes, but listen. We didn't take his money unfairly. We gave him what he wanted. He believed he bought the missing horse. He's happy. We're happy. Everyone wins." Jeff shook his head. "Andy, that's not right." Andy stood up and started packing. "Right or wrong, my friend, the train leaves in an hour." They left the city that night, carrying $2,500 in their bag. Mr. Scudder was sleeping peacefully in his grand house, dreaming about his two golden horses. In the morning, when he looked at his collection, he would still see one horse and believe the other was safe somewhere in the city. This is how life plays strange games. Some people use their brains to create beauty, others to create tricks. Andy believed he was smart, and maybe he was. But smartness without honesty is a dangerous thing. When you read this story, you understand how greed works. Mr. Scudder had more money than he could ever spend, yet he wanted more. More beauty, more fame, more satisfaction. Andy and Jeff saw that hunger and used it. In the end, both sides were fooled by the same thing: desire. If you think deeply, every person in this story wanted something. Andy wanted quick money. Jeff wanted to believe he was honest. Scudder wanted to look rich in taste and culture. All of them were searching for something outside themselves, and that's why they lost the game of truth. In life, we often see people like that. They chase things because they think owning more will make them more important. But real value never comes from gold or art. It comes from honesty, from peace in your heart, from sleeping at night knowing you hurt no one. Maybe you too have seen people who try to look better than they are. They wear expensive things, speak fancy words, and act superior. But inside, they are afraid someone will discover their emptiness. That fear makes them easy to fool. And that is the lesson in this story. Greed and pride open the door for trickery. Andy Tucker and Jeff Peters were not evil. They were reflections of human cleverness without conscience. They used words like tools and made plans like artists. But what they never learned was that wisdom without kindness is like a ship without a compass. It can sail fast, but it never knows where to go. If you ever feel tempted to trick someone, remember Mr. Scudder and Andy. Remember how easily happiness can turn into shame. When you choose honesty, maybe you earn less, but you sleep better. And when you earn money with kindness, it lasts longer in your heart. The story of the art game shows that money can buy art, but it cannot buy class. It can buy a golden horse, but not real happiness. It can buy silence, but not peace. And that, my friends, is what makes this story so real. It's not just about two clever men. It's about every person who has ever stood between greed and goodness. The question is always the same: which side will you choose? Chapter 3: The Troubadour. It was a long, hot summer afternoon in Texas. The wind carried dust across the wide, empty fields. The sky looked endless and blue. Cows stood still under small trees, trying to hide from the sun. On one of these lonely roads, a man was riding his horse slowly. His name was Sam Galloway. He was a troubadour, a traveling musician and storyteller, who moved from one ranch to another. He had no home of his own, but he had a gift. Wherever he went, he brought laughter, stories, and songs. People gave him food, a bed, and friendship in return. For weeks, Sam had been traveling through Texas and Oklahoma, singing songs for ranchers and cowboys. They liked him because he listened to their problems and made them forget their worries for a while. He sang about love, courage, and life under the open sky. He carried his guitar and an old hat, and everywhere he went, people called him Sam the Troubadour. That day, Sam was leaving a big ranch called the Merrydew Ranch. The Merrydew family was kind and rich. There were always visitors, laughter, and music in their house. But Sam wanted something quieter now. He missed peace. He wanted to stay in a place where the nights were silent and the stars looked close. So he packed his small bag, tied his guitar to his horse, and rode toward a new place. By evening he reached a small sheep ranch owned by Mr. Peter Ellison, an old man who worked hard all his life. The fence around the ranch was broken in many places. The house was small and the field was dry, but there was kindness in the old man's eyes. "Good evening, stranger," Mr. Ellison said when Sam arrived. "You look tired. Come inside and have some supper." Sam smiled. "Thank you, sir. I'm a troubadour. I sing and tell stories. I can play for your men tonight if you give me a place to sleep." Mr. Ellison laughed softly. "A singer is always welcome here. Come in. My men will enjoy your stories." That night the ranch was full of joy. Sam sang songs about faraway cities, brave cowboys, and faithful love. The workers listened with open hearts. The old man sat near the fire, his face calm for the first time in many weeks. When the music stopped, he said, "You have a gift, Sam. You make old people like me forget our troubles for a while." Sam smiled and replied, "That's what songs are for, sir, to make the heart lighter." Days turned into weeks. Sam stayed longer than he planned because he liked Mr. Ellison's company. Every evening after work they sat together. Sam played soft tunes on his guitar, and the old man listened quietly. Sometimes he would close his eyes and smile. But not everything was peaceful in Mr. Ellison's world. He had problems with his land and his sheep. The fields were dry, and he owed money to the bank. The price of wool had fallen. Some of his men wanted to leave. He tried not to show his sadness, but Sam noticed it in his eyes. One morning the old man rode out to check his sheep. The sun was high and the air was heavy with heat. On the road he saw another rider coming from the opposite side, a tall young man on a fine horse, wearing a white hat and clean boots. The man stopped in front of him and said coldly, "Good morning. Are you Peter Ellison?" "Yes, I am," said the old man. "And who might you be?" "My name is James King," the young man said. "People call me King James. These are my lands, and I don't want your sheep here. You have 1 week to move them. If you don't, they'll be dead sheep." The old man tried to explain, "But Mr. King, I didn't know this was your land. I don't have another place for them. Please, give me some time." "You have 7 days," King James said firmly. "No more." Then he turned his horse and rode away without another word. Mr. Ellison watched him disappear in the dust. His hands were shaking. He was a proud man, but now he felt small. He went home that evening looking tired and broken. At dinner, Sam saw his sadness. "You look worried tonight, sir. What's wrong?" he asked. Mr. Ellison sighed. "A rich man named King James says my sheep are on his land. He gave me 1 week to move them, but I have nowhere else to go. I can't fight him. He's powerful and cruel." Sam put down his guitar. "I've heard that name before. People talk about him everywhere in Texas. He owns land, banks, and cattle. He's not kind, sir. Maybe it's better not to fight him." The old man smiled weakly. "I don't plan to fight anyone, Sam. I'll think of something. For now, play me some music. Maybe it will help me forget." That night, Sam sang quietly, but his heart was not peaceful. He felt anger toward this man called King James. He couldn't understand how someone with so much could hurt someone with so little. He looked at the old man's tired face and felt protective. The next morning, Mr. Ellison rode to town to talk to the banker and some other ranchers. He wanted to find help, but no one could do much. Everyone was afraid of King James. By the afternoon, Mr. Ellison returned home feeling defeated. Later that day, he went back to the field again, hoping to speak with King James one more time. The young man was already there, waiting. This time his face was softer. "Mr. Ellison," he said, "I want to talk to you. Please listen to my story." The old man looked surprised. "All right, go ahead." King James looked into the distance for a moment and then began. "You are from Jackson, Mississippi, right?" "Yes," the old man said slowly. "I lived there many years ago." "Do you know a woman named Caroline Reeves?" Mr. Ellison's eyes filled with emotion. "Yes, she was my sister. She passed away years ago." King James nodded gently. Then I must tell you something important. When I was 15 years old, I was alone in Jackson. I had no family, no food, no money. Your sister saw me on the street one winter day. She took me into her house. She fed me, gave me clothes, and found me a job at the hotel. Every Sunday she invited me to her home. She treated me like her own son. Because of her kindness, I was able to save money and start a small business. Years passed. I moved to Texas, bought land, and became rich. But I never forgot her kindness. She gave me a gold watch and said, "James, remember to help others when you can." And now I find her brother standing before me. The young man smiled softly. "Mr. Ellison, I owe everything to your sister. You don't have to move your sheep. Keep them here as long as you want. And if you need money, I will help you. I'll put $2,000 in your bank tomorrow morning. Go to the store, buy what you need. I'll speak to the storekeeper myself. You don't have to worry any more." The old man's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to say, son. You're a good man. My sister would be proud of you." King James shook his hand firmly. "I'm only repaying a debt of kindness, sir." As the young man rode away, Mr. Ellison felt light for the first time in months. His problems were over. He smiled all the way back to the ranch. He wanted to tell Sam the good news. But when he entered the house, Sam was not there. His guitar was gone. The old man waited for hours, but Sam didn't return. It was late evening when the door finally opened. Sam walked in, his clothes covered in dust. His face looked serious. "Where were you, Sam?" the old man asked. "You're very late tonight." Sam didn't smile. He sat down at the table quietly. "Mr. Ellison, I went to the town of Frio today. I looked for King James." The old man frowned. "Why would you do that?" Sam looked straight at him. "Because I wanted to protect you. I took your big knife with me. I found him in a hotel behind the theater. He saw me coming. His hand went to his gun, but I was faster. You don't need to worry about him any more." Mr. Ellison's face turned pale. "Sam, what do you mean?" Sam spoke slowly. "He's dead." The room went silent. The old man's hands began to shake. For a moment he couldn't speak. Then he said softly, "Sam, you don't understand. That man came to me today. He wasn't my enemy. He was my sister's friend. He came to help me." Sam's eyes widened. His lips trembled. The truth hit him like a storm. He had killed the man who came with kindness. He had acted out of love, but without knowledge. Mr. Ellison looked away, his voice trembling. "I can't understand things this evening. Maybe tomorrow I will. Play some music, Sam. Maybe it will help us both." Sam took his guitar, but his hands could not move. The strings were silent. The music that had once brought joy now felt like a heavy weight. Outside, the wind blew across the empty fields. The stars came out one by one, shining coldly above the Texas sky. Inside that small house, two men sat in silence, one heartbroken by guilt, the other by grief. The story of Sam Galloway and Mr. Ellison is not about evil. It is about good hearts that act too quickly. Sam wanted to protect a friend. He wanted to fight for kindness. But in his hurry, he never asked the full story. His good intention turned into tragedy. Sometimes in life, we also act before understanding. We think we are helping, but we hurt. We think we are protecting, but we destroy. The world doesn't always need fast actions. Sometimes it needs listening. Sometimes it needs patience. This story reminds us that love without wisdom can become danger. It shows us that sometimes silence is stronger than violence, and understanding is stronger than bravery. When you finish listening to this, take a moment to think. Have you ever judged someone before hearing their side? Have you ever fought for someone without knowing the whole truth? Remember, Sam. Remember how one mistake changed everything. Good intentions are powerful, but they must walk with wisdom. A kind heart is beautiful, but it needs eyes that see clearly. And in that lonely Texas night, as the stars watched, the troubadour finally learned his hardest lesson. Music can heal others, but it cannot heal regret. Chapter 4. Money Talks. It was a quiet morning on Park Street, one of the most beautiful streets in New York. The air smelled of flowers from the gardens behind tall iron gates. Big houses stood proudly side by side, each one larger than the other, each one showing its owner's success. At number 24 lived an old man named Mr. Anthony Rockwall. He was one of those men who worked all his life, starting with nothing and ending with everything. He owned a soap company, and his soap had made him rich. His name was known in every part of the city. He was old now, his hair white and his steps slow, but his spirit was strong. He liked to sit in his big chair near the window and look at the busy world outside. That morning Mr. Rockwall called out loudly, "Richard, come here, my boy. I want to talk to you." His son, Richard Rockwall, came in from the next room. He was 21, tall and handsome, but quiet and serious. He looked like a man who thought deeply about things. "Yes, father," he said, sitting down beside him. Mr. Rockwall smiled proudly. "Richard, look at this house, look at this street. Do you know what all this means?" Richard waited quietly. The old man continued, "It means money, my boy. It means success. It means power. I worked hard for it, and now you have it. These men who live around us are gentlemen. They come from good families, but they are not better than us. We may not have old family names, but we have money. And money, my son, can open every door in the world." Richard smiled softly. "It can open some doors, father, but not every door." The old man's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean, not every door? Money can do anything. It can make people listen to you. It can make people respect you. It can even make them love you." Richard shook his head gently. "No, father. It can't buy love or kindness. It can't make someone truly care about you." Mr. Rockwall laughed. "You're young, my boy. When you're older, you'll understand that love is easier to find when you have a full wallet." Richard didn't argue. He knew his father's mind was made of experience, but also pride. After a moment of silence, the old man leaned forward. "Tell me the truth, son. Something is troubling you. What is it? You don't look happy these days." Richard looked down and spoke softly. "It's a woman, father." "Aha!" said Mr. Rockwall, smiling. "I knew it. There is always a woman. Tell me about her." "Her name is Ellen Lantry," Richard said. "She is the most beautiful woman I have ever met. She's kind, intelligent, and full of grace. I've been in love with her for months." The old man nodded. "Then tell her, my boy. Tell her how you feel. Dance with her. Walk with her. Buy her flowers. Money can help you show your heart." Richard sighed. "That's the problem, father. I don't get the chance to talk to her alone. She's always surrounded by people. Her parents are rich and busy. They go to parties, theaters, and dinners. She's leaving for Europe tomorrow morning by ship, and she'll stay there for 2 years. Tonight I'm taking her to the theater, but it's a short drive. I won't have enough time to tell her everything." The old man listened carefully. "So, you love her, but you have no time to speak your heart. Is that right?" Richard nodded. "Yes, father. I can't buy time. Even your money can't do that." Mr. Rockwall leaned back in his chair and smiled mysteriously. "Don't be so sure, my boy. Money can't buy time, but it can sometimes stop it." Richard looked confused. "What do you mean?" The old man didn't answer. He waved his hand. "Leave that to me. You just get ready for your evening. Take Miss Lantry to the theater, Be calm and speak honestly." That evening, the city lights began to glow. The streets were full of carriages and automobiles. People in elegant clothes hurried to restaurants and theaters. At 8 o'clock, Richard arrived at Miss Lantry's house. She came out wearing a white dress that sparkled under the lamps. Her parents waved goodbye from the porch as she stepped into the car. "Good evening, Richard," she said with a smile. "It's such a beautiful night for the theater." "Yes, it is," he said softly, trying to hide his nervousness. The car started moving through the streets. To Wallach's Theater, Richard told the driver. The city looked alive, full of color and sound. For a few minutes they talked about music and the play they were going to see. Richard kept glancing at her, wanting to say what was in his heart but afraid to begin. Then, suddenly, the car stopped. There was a loud noise outside. The driver looked back and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Rockwall. We can't move. There are carriages and cars everywhere. It's a traffic jam." "How bad is it?" Richard asked. "Completely blocked, sir. We can't go forward or backward." Ellen looked out the window. "Oh no. Are we going to be late?" Richard smiled nervously. "It looks like it." Minutes passed. The noise of horns and shouting filled the air. The cars didn't move at all. People leaned out of windows to complain, but inside the car, something beautiful began to happen. Ellen laughed softly. "Well, we can't fight the city, can we? I don't like theater that much anyway. I'm happy to stay here and talk." Her words made Richard's heart race. He smiled. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she said, her eyes gentle. "Tell me about yourself, Richard. I've always wanted to know what kind of man you are." For the first time they spoke freely. Richard told her about his dreams, his childhood, his hopes for the future. Ellen listened with interest. She told him about her travels, her love for music, and her wish to find someone honest and kind. The hours passed quietly while the cars outside stood still. Finally, Richard found his courage. "Ellen," he said softly, "I didn't want this evening to end without telling you something important. I love you. I have loved you for a long time." She looked surprised, then smiled. "I'm glad you said that, Richard. I've felt the same. I didn't know you cared." Richard couldn't believe his ears. The traffic jam had given him the gift of time. The noise around them disappeared. All he could hear was her voice. They talked until the streets slowly began to move again. When the car finally reached the theater, it was too late for the show, but neither of them cared. They had already found something more beautiful than a play. That night, when Richard returned home, his face was glowing with happiness. He ran into his father's room. The old man was sitting in his chair reading the newspaper. "Father," Richard said joyfully, "Ellen loves me. We are going to be together. It was perfect. We never made it to the theater because of the traffic, but it gave us hours to talk. We found each other." Mr. Rockwall folded his newspaper slowly. "I'm very happy for you, son." Richard laughed. "You see, Father, you were wrong. Money can't buy love. It just happened. It was fate." The old man smiled quietly. "Fate, yes, but fate sometimes needs a little help." Richard didn't understand, but he was too happy to ask. He said good night and went to his room. The next morning at 7 o'clock there was a knock on the door. A man named Mr. Kelly, wearing a worker's cap, stood there. "Good morning, Mr. Rockwall," he said respectfully. "I came for my pay." "Ah, yes, Mr. Kelly," the old man said, counting out money. "Here's your $5,000. Mr. Kelly nodded. "It was a difficult job, sir. The drivers wanted $10 each, and the policemen wanted $50. But I managed to stop every car on 34th Street exactly as you asked. For 2 hours the whole road was blocked. Your son's car didn't move an inch. I hope everything went well?" Mr. Rockwall smiled. "Yes, Kelly, everything went perfectly. You can go now." When the man left, the old man poured himself a cup of coffee and looked out the window. The sun was shining, the city was awake, and his heart felt peaceful. He whispered to himself, "Love and money, they are enemies, but sometimes they shake hands." That is how a father used his wealth not to buy love, but to buy time. Time for his son to speak his heart. Time for two young people to understand each other. This story shows a side of life that is both funny and wise. Money cannot buy emotions, but it can create the chance for emotions to grow. Without that blocked street, without that quiet moment inside the car, Richard might never have spoken. Love sometimes needs a pause, and in this story, that pause was made by money. Still, the truth remains the same. Money can make roads stop, but it cannot make hearts open. Only honesty can do that. Mr. Rockwall's money created a moment, but Richard's words made it real. If you look closely, you can see two generations in this story, one that believes in power and one that believes in feeling. The father used money to control life. The son used words to open his heart. Both were right in their own way. Maybe that's how the world works. Some things can be fixed by money, like traffic or problems at work, but other things, like love, kindness, and peace, belong only to the heart. So next time you feel that you don't have enough money to change something, remember this story. Sometimes all you need is courage, not cash, and sometimes when life is kind, even money can serve love instead of pride. Chapter 5. Soapy's Winter Home. The Irony of Change. It was the first cold week of December in New York City. The wind had changed its voice. The trees were bare, and the sky was the color of iron. The lights in the rich parts of the city were bright, but on the side streets the shadows grew longer each day. On a small bench in Madison Square Park sat a man named Soapy. He was not young anymore, and he was not old either. He wore a coat that had once been warm, but was now thin and tired like its owner. His shoes had holes. His hat had lost its shape. And yet he was smiling softly to himself. For 9 months of the year, Soapy loved this life. He slept on the park benches in summer, washed his face in the fountain, and read old newspapers that people left behind. He liked freedom. He didn't have to work. He didn't have to follow anyone's rules. But when December came, freedom became painful. The nights were too cold. The benches were frozen. Even the policemen looked kinder because they stood near warm doors. Soapy knew he couldn't stay outside for winter. He needed a home. He had one plan that never failed him. Every year, when winter began, he went to Blackwell's Island, the city jail. There he got a bed, food, and heat for 3 months. Then in spring he was free again to enjoy the sunshine. To Soapy, jail was not punishment, it was his winter hotel. He smiled thinking about it. "Time to go back to my winter home," he whispered. Now the question was how to get arrested. He didn't want to hurt anyone or steal anything big. He just needed to do a small wrong thing so that a policeman would take him away for 3 months. That was his plan every year, and it always worked. He looked around and saw a bright restaurant on the corner. Through the window he could see men in suits eating hot soup and talking. The smell of roast turkey floated into the street. Soapy's stomach growled. Perfect, he thought. I'll eat a big dinner there, and when the waiter asks for money, I'll say I have none. They'll call a policeman. Simple. He walked proudly to the door, but the man at the entrance stopped him. He looked at Soapy's torn shoes and old hat. "You can't come in here," the man said. "This place is for gentlemen." Soapy smiled sadly. "I only wanted to eat." "Go eat somewhere else," the man said, pushing the door closed. Soapy walked away, angry and hungry. "All right," he muttered. "If they won't help me, I'll help myself." He stopped in front of a big glass store window full of shining items. The glass was clean like water. Soapy picked up a small stone from the street and threw it hard. The window broke with a loud crash. The sound ran through the cold air like thunder. In a moment, a policeman came running. He saw the broken glass and Soapy standing nearby with his hands in his pockets. "Who did this?" the policeman shouted. Soapy smiled. "Maybe I did, maybe not." The policeman looked at him carefully. "You don't look like a man who'd break windows," he said. Then someone far away was running. "There he goes," shouted another man. The policeman ran after the running figure, leaving Soapy standing beside the broken glass, laughing quietly. "Well, that didn't work," he said. "Time for Plan B." He walked down 6th Avenue until he saw another restaurant, not so fancy but still good enough. He entered boldly, sat at a table, and ordered a big meal, soup, steak, coffee, and a pie. He ate happily. For the first time in days, his stomach felt warm. When the waiter brought the bill, Soapy leaned back and said calmly, "I don't have any money." The waiter's face turned red. "No money?" "No," said Soapy. "Call the police. They'll know what to do." But the waiter didn't call the police. Instead, he called 2 strong men from the kitchen. They grabbed Soapy by his arms and threw him out into the street. He landed hard on the sidewalk, but he was still laughing. "2 restaurants, 2 failures," he said. "This city is getting soft." The night grew colder. Snowflakes began to fall. Soapy walked toward Broadway, where bright lights and music filled the air. Elegant ladies in long coats stepped out of carriages. Men in hats helped them into theaters. Soapy looked at them and smiled. "Maybe I'll make some noise here. That'll get me arrested." He started dancing wildly on the sidewalk. He waved his arms and sang loudly, pretending to be drunk. People turned to look. A tall policeman stood nearby, watching. Soapy danced closer to him and shouted, "Officer, how do you like my singing tonight?" The policeman smiled and turned to another man. "He's just one of those young actors from the theater school. They always act crazy for fun. Leave him alone." Soapy stopped. He couldn't believe it. "They think I'm an actor," he said to himself. "Even when I try to be bad, they think I'm good." He walked on, frustrated. His feet hurt, and his hands were cold. On a quiet street, he saw a shop window half open. Inside, a pen was lying near the glass. He looked around. No one was watching. Slowly he reached in, took the pen, and started walking away. A man ran out of the shop and shouted, "Hey, stop! That's my pen, Ahem!" Soapy turned around calmly. "Oh, is it? Call a policeman then." The man looked nervous. "No, no police. Take it. I don't want trouble." He turned and went back inside. Soapy stared at the pen in his hand. "Unbelievable," he said. "Even thieves can't get arrested these days." He threw the pen away and sat down on a cold step. For the first time he felt tired of this life. He looked up at the buildings, the shining windows, the families inside eating and laughing. He wondered what it would feel like to live like that, to have a bed, a warm room, someone waiting for you. A church stood across the street. From inside came the sound of a soft organ and a quiet voice singing. The song was gentle, almost like a whisper. Soapy listened. Something moved inside his heart. The music reminded him of another time, when he was young, when he had a job, when his mother was alive. He remembered her voice, her hands, her prayers for him. He hadn't thought of her in years. He sat there listening, and tears filled his eyes. "What have I done with my life?" he whispered. "I can change. I can work again. I can start tomorrow." The decision felt real, like light after a long night. He stood up, full of new strength. "Tomorrow," he said aloud, "I'll go to work. I'll be honest. I'll make her proud." He smiled for the first time without pretending. He felt alive again. Then a heavy hand touched his shoulder. A deep voice said, "What are you doing here, my man?" Soapy turned around. It was a policeman. "Nothing, officer," Soapy said quickly. "I was just sitting here, listening to the music." The policeman frowned. "No job? No address?" "Not now, but I'm going to look for one tomorrow. I'm changing my life," Soapy said, his voice full of hope. The policeman nodded slowly. "All right, come with me." Soapy's heart sank. "Why?" "For loitering," the policeman said. "You can explain to the judge tomorrow." The next morning, Soapy stood before the judge in court. The room smelled of paper and cold air. The judge looked at him over his glasses. "3 months in the city jail," he said. Soapy smiled weakly. His plan had finally worked, but too late. The moment he decided to change, the world decided to punish him. That night, in his small jail cell, he lay on the hard bed and looked at the ceiling. The sound of other prisoners filled the silence. He whispered to himself, "I wanted freedom, then warmth, then change. Maybe next winter I'll get it right." Outside, snow covered the city like a blanket. The streets were white, and the cold wind blew softly over Madison Square Park, where one empty bench waited for spring. This story of Soapy is both funny and sad. It makes you laugh at his strange plans, but it also makes you think about life. How often do we wait for life to force us to change? How many times do we make the same mistake again and again? Soapy's story teaches us that every chance to change is precious, and we must take it before it disappears. When you read it slowly, you realize that Soapy wasn't a bad man. He was just tired, lost, and afraid. The world looked too big for him. But even he had a moment of light, a moment when he wanted to be better. Sometimes life gives us such moments too. The question is whether we act before it's too late. Soapy's winter home was a jail, but his real prison was his habit. And that is true for many people. We live inside invisible prisons built by fear, laziness, or shame. The key is always in our hands, but we forget it. Maybe this winter we can learn from Soapy. Maybe it's time to change before the world pushes us. Maybe it's time to start again while the heart is still warm. And perhaps that is why O. Henry's stories still touch hearts after so many years. They are not about heroes or kings. They are about us, ordinary people, foolish at times, kind at others, always trying to find a little bit of light in the cold. These stories remind us that life is not about what we own, but about what we give, feel, and learn along the way. If these stories touched your heart or helped you learn something new in English, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your favorite story in the comments. Your support means a lot and helps me keep creating stories that inspire and teach. Thank you for watching, my friends. Keep learning, keep growing, and I'll see you in the next video.